Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Death Session 41. Nicely done. 41. Nicely done. Doesn't rhyme. Dissonance. Dissonant. That's a dissonant rhyme. A really good example of a dissonant rhyme or dissonance. There's probably another word for that I'm blanking on. But a dissonant rhyme would be in the Wu-Tang Clan. The Method Man says, "Hey, you get off my cloud. You don't know me and you don't know my style." And he's kind of trying to bend style and cloud. Style. Anyway, that is just a opener right there for the peoples. 41. Where are we at this 41 episode? I'm being very productive, and I think a lot of anxiety has abated to a degree. I've heard this from many productivity people and creative coach types that, having shit to do, being purpose-driven is, where you will find alleviation of anxieties or alleviation of giving yourself the blues. And I think that is sage, sage and very helpful for sure. And the things I have to do are pretty much read the thing every day. I'm talking about my one-man show. If you're not aware, this is a vlog slash, confessional slash pod solo man doing a solo show. I've written a show. I am doing it on the 21st for literally a handful, meaning 5 or less, maybe 5 or 8 tops. 5-8 people in a room in a studio in Santa Monica to get the first sort of propulsion toward working this out to full production, taking some input, communing with some friends to see if they can vibe on it and seeing if there's anywhere to go with this. And I'm very hopeful that there is. And I'm starting to finally put at rest procrastination, which is also in an inspection of it. In my case, I don't know if this is the case for everybody. Sometimes procrastination is delaying the happiness, I suppose, in a weird way. And I've said this before, if joy is on the horizon, why procrastinate? And if things such as theater, friends, acting, storytelling, comedy, if all those things that are sort of ingrained in you brought you joy and you know they will again, then the hiding from them is beyond counterintuitive. It's counterhumane to thyself. It's anti self-care. So I am now getting enthusiastic. It's almost like I can't wait. And I have a few technical little things. I have a playlist that we're going to play, a playlist at interstitial moments. I have a playlist that will play at certain cues, so I'm going to have a run through of that. I am going to print old school, go to a Staples and print pictures and put them in a binder and then flip the pictures that would eventually be hopefully what would be projectable on a back wall if I got to the point where I had that kind of technology. I've ordered something that is an important prop in the development of the story, which I then am thinking about spray painting gold maybe. But it's all starting to come together and I'm getting excited, and that I think I have to remember that all of these things are exciting because they offer a chance to get kind of back to that place in the sun that I've identified as my happy place. I talk in the show about the times when I meditate or deep breathe. Sometimes they do the image, the garden of your soul or your garden of your heart, where you literally see a hedge and you see that an entrance can be a wood door or not, and you start to, and I was so immature when I was in drama school that we did a lot of these breathing exercises and or meditations, and they talked about finding your quiet place, and I mocked it and said, hey, I'm gonna, can you check the mail at my quiet space? I couldn't make it, and I wasn't available to that. And then as I got older and had to find ways to breathe and make myself in touch with that, which only happened maybe 5-7 years ago, a lot of times I would be in a theater space, mopping or sweeping the stage, being the last one to walk out, staring out at the empty seats. A lot of times when I would do a play, it meant so much to me, and then the closing night would be very sad. I would, sneak back in. Hey, I forgot something. I'd sneak back in just to get alone time in the theater to say a prayer from the stage, to have another chance to perform in this sacred place. And that's what it is to me, and that's how serious I kind of can be about it, even when you're talking about dick jokes and stuff like that. And that's, I guess, part of why I didn't have that reverent feeling in stand-up, because stand-up is in a nightclub environment. If you're in a club, it's drinks, cocktails, mozzarella sticks, and it's commerce and art, and there's a green room, and it's this thing, and it's just not reverent. And the goal is, hopefully 3 laughs a minute if you're cooking. And there is a very bullfighter feeling for that, and the theater, and I'm not saying because I want it to be easy, the theater's just a little more reverent for a time, I suppose. I mean, people can go to sleep, people can walk out, but they don't interact, and they have a certain notion that this is a play, and that's what I've written, even though it has elements of stand-up in it. And I never got that feeling of reverence. I couldn't feel like it was almost a holy thing to pursue stand-up. Also, a lot of stand-up you do in a bar where they didn't want you, and you would have to commandeer it. You'd have to win the room over. You'd have to fight over the crowd. You'd have to beg them to turn the TVs off. You'd have to wait for the game to be over. All these things is not conducive to attention and hearing the words and the nuance of the details and things like that. They made you very bulletproof and made more attentive audiences. Made you very appreciative, and also like you could crush when you would go out of town because of how you had to fight so hard. And a lot of times in Los Angeles, the crowds are industry-ish or just they want to be the center of attention. So the worst thing they can do is give anyone other than themselves attention. So, you have that energy going. And so I talk about this because I am sort of summoning and noticing what they call glimmers, right? So they say synchronicity, or, when quote unquote fucked up shit, step in dog shit, that's not a good one. But if you start to change your attitude, you start to see glimmers, which are like deja vu moments, or they're just like synchronistic. There's money on the meter. You're about to get on a long ass line at the grocery store, and they change their mind and they forgot something. So then there's nobody in front of you. Those little things where, when you're in a bad mood, when life is kicking your ass, it's a cacophony or a preponderance of fuck, I got cut off. Fuck, they're out of fucking bags in the fucking produce section. All these things, you start noticing the negative synchronicity, but the glimmers. And so I'm noticing some of those, and I'm trying to conjure them. And because I'm going back into this reverent space of doing my show and reminding myself it's a play, a one-man play. And I'm trying to, I have a friend who lived in LA for many years. I met him, and he moved back to Florida, and he works as a stand-up very, very successfully all over the South Florida. And he's also done a one-man show, and he's doing another one. And we were talking, and I was just sort of, I just wanted to touch base and say, hey, I'm doing my first read-through. You got any? It's just really kind of a camaraderie, esprit de corps thing. And as a stand-up comic for 30 years, this guy, headliner, TV, all that kind of thing, I've opened for him. I've been, I've been, I've asked him for guest spots when I was in Tampa at the Improv. He's helped me out. And he still says he said to me the other day, the most proud he's been and the most fulfilling thing he's done was his one-man show when he put it up in a theater and ran it. And I didn't ask him why. I kind of was a little presumptuous and a little bit of I interrupted. I said, may I suggest what I think it is? And I think he started in stand-up, I started in theater, and now I was trying to say the magic of theater, the more reverent nature, the fact that you had written it as a piece of art rather than stand-up where you develop bits and you try to get laughs. He had given himself the freedom to craft a story, and it was personal, and it didn't always get a laugh on every sentence wasn't a shticky line, and it was a piece of theater. And I said, and I think that is where you kind of felt the bug of you got bit by the bug of the magic of theater, and all that hokey stuff. And he agreed. So it was a really good phone call to make. It was he's someone I sporadically check in with, and so though I consider that sort of a little bit of refortifying, getting ready to do this, and but I know that's true. When I did my play in New York, which I talk about in the one-man show, it didn't achieve mass appeal, but it was very fulfilling. And some of my bad mindset stuff made it appear to be, oh man, this is over. Like it was a sad day for it to end. But I do remember we had to return the theater to its black. I think I had to paint the floor or at least mop the floor. I may have had stage crew do that, so I don't want to pretend if I'm incorrect and anybody sees this. You didn't paint the floor, fucker. I vaguely remember that I did, or that I at least swept it or mopped it, or I may have just said, hey, thank you for doing this, and just had that moment in the theater to say, quote unquote, goodbye, and to pray for another day. And not to pick on myself or to give myself a hard time. It's been a long time coming, and I'm moving back into that thing. Another glimmer happened when I never watch them. I don't often keep up on the New York papers in LA as much as I fancy myself a man of the theater. I don't know I think Hamilton and Lion King are still up, but through social media and through alumni news, there was a lot of Carnegie Mellon grads nominated this year and a winner, and they did a 10-year anniversary of Hamilton, which had Carnegie people in it, and some of them, somebody I know, got a break in a show that, these things, and they're classes ahead of me, which is inspiring to me, because they haven't let up and I haven't let up. It's just that, I have to gather strength, gather momentum, and so I'm very excited, and I got to be careful not to be overexcited, not to set up this thing, but I do feel like I'm getting some kind of connection back into the whys, the feeling, what I'm trying to communicate. And I talked last week about things going from like from a me to a we, and my rewriting and my efforts to get fluent, not off book, but fluent with the material, so that I can really connect, at least with my head above the page, and to not bore people, and to check runtime and all that stuff. I've been getting fluent with it, but inevitably I have to pause the timer, because I can change that. I can tighten that up. Can I take that out? In rare case, I put something back in. I put a little more of a poetic paragraph in, because I think it was thin at that point. But I still have room to cut, and I still have, room to change course, I think. And now I think I have to hold draft for this first feedback session, because at some point you can't tinker, and at some point you got to say, let this one roll. But the thing that really helped me this last week between desk sessions is I'm coming up with a synopsis and coming up with, like, I guess, a log line and a new title. And finally, I think I have it. It's really taken it away from sort of the treacly original title. It's the original title. I'm glad I took some input. I didn't want to. So I had originally, if you remember, it was called Carl D's Last Shot, which had a desperation to it. I thought it would be clever because there's a through line of me drinking shots of iced tea and shit. But there's a through line of that, and that it was originally when my concept was a little bit more about my carousing days. So, and then the notion of it's never your last shot if you keep setting up that there'll be something after this. But there was a weird kind of like defeatism to it that I agreed with a friend that maybe I'd revisit it. And so then I've always had this title, which is 9 Miles from Manhattan. It was that. And then it was We Carry the Light, which I liked a lot. But I get to hold that back and keep that line in the show. And I don't have to worry about being a turnoff to people who, don't vibe on light as an imagery or the new aginess of it. And so I was in between that, and now I've come up with a new title, and it's called now, my one-man show is called The Return of Otis Redding. And it's not about Otis Redding, and there isn't any Otis Redding music, but there is a reference recurrent that makes sense if you will one day see it and understand why it's called The Return of Otis Redding, which to me gets me excited because it's got that like storytelling. It's got that sort of harkening back. It's a great artist who died too soon. Dock of the Bay. Try a little tenderness. It conjures something, and then it's a one-man show, and it's this Italian American kid from New Jersey telling stories, and it could be a little confusing, but it also is evocative, is what I'm thinking. So the title really kind of popped out, and it was just like I'd finally been sifting through it to find something that was almost like an object, the title being an object, a token, if you will, to bring people in, to rally behind. My play in New York was called Knee Deep. I thought that was a cool title. And it was a real good rallying cry. You can see it on a poster. And, now I'm visualizing the return of Otis Redding on a cassette in a one-man show instead of the titles of the songs and stuff. And it's got a throwback thing, obviously, because we're talking about the 1980s and 90s and, that kind of thing. But the other part of what's really helped me this week, and with all these synchronistic hearkenings and reminding myself who and what and how and why I am, hoping that I can connect with the muse of fire that really ignited my soul. I wrote a log line, which is a good practice. They say along with screenplay writing, you have to be able to say to somebody, elevator pitch it, Die Hard, an estranged husband tries to reunite with his wife and has to fight off terrorists to save her. I'm sure that's not even a great one. You get it down to that line that you read when you click on a thumbnail for a movie. That log line, I think it's a good exercise for all writing. And so I kind of worked it out, and I'm working on having it, now it's committing to memory. And so I'm going to lay it on you, and if you're listening and you, it'd be good feedback to know if it's, it's the kind of log line that, I'd see that, or, I know a one-man show is always a tough sell, but good ones can be enlightening and invigorating, and that's where I'm living in terms of the objective. So, for the log line, I have, and I may have to refer to something if I screw up, but the log line, or the synopsis, the short version, because eventually after I do this reading, I got to think about, is there a place I can perform this? Is there a place I can submit? Right now, the Fringe Festival is happening now, so I'd be a year away from trying to, so I want to do all this stuff and have it locked and loaded. And then as you have a great log line, you must, in my opinion, sift and what's that word? Use as a sieve. The rewrites are to reduce, go through the process of sifting out things that don't really bolster or buttress that log line. Like, for example, if you said American Beauty was about the demise of real estate, you'd be way off. And it's got a real estate subplot, but it's not about that. It might be about the decline of America, the dislocation of the suburbs, blah blah blah. But if you were working off it's about the decline of real estate, you wouldn't be merging the two, the intention, the overarching theme, and the call to action, which is what I think I'm really writing, is this call to action, the evocative, please come see this, but not in a begging way, but in a, this is the story, as best I can narrow it down to a couple sentences. So here it goes. On a mission to declutter, a man finds a photo which jars a memory and ignites the story of the return of Otis Redding, spanning a decades-long quest for art, faith, and belonging. A solo show which questions the cost of chasing an elusive dream. That's it. That's good. I can say that. I feel pretty good about that. Maybe it'll take some tweaking, but the things I like about it, and I'll share them with you, is the fiery imagery, igniting a quest on a mission to declutter. Now, it's really about a guy who found I don't want to spoil it too much, but a photo that, and that's been used many times, a photo where, that's a very classic, old school, maybe a bit well-worn plot twist. There's a Karate Kid, there's a picture of Mr. Miyagi as a soldier, which tells the story of what he's gone through. So a photo in storage is a thing that jars memory. And so and a lot of one-person shows are confessional. They are sometimes they are entreaties to a way of thinking. Sometimes they're biographical. They bring a historical figure to life. A lot of them are about personal struggles, overcoming disease, overcoming near-death experiences, being from a different culture. A coming out story. How I survived the the Harvey Firestein stuff. Like, a lot of this stuff has, a point of departure that is got to be different and unique. And, I've had to sift through it and take out things that didn't have, I don't have a struggle story I wish to tell, other than it's hard. This business is tough. What I did for love, can't forget, won't regret, what I did for love, those are universal. And yes, it may not be everyone's cup of tea to hear about the struggle of an actor at a certain age, but rather than say like a perseverance through the arts, that was a thing that was tossing up, but I say the cost, questions the cost of pursuing an elusive dream. Meaning that there's pros and cons, that there are sacrifices that may have been too much, or there may have been too many worries associated with this. And this all was sort of coming to me as I was watching a CMU alum accept a Tony Award, and someone I knew, and it was very invigorating, very inspiring, and very channeling of a shared artistic lineage, which is a big theme of the show, is that and I know this is probably more precious than a lot of people really want to give it credit for, but there is a camaraderie of purpose in the theater, and they talked about it. Every acceptance speech talked about this community and their and all that, and There's definitely political over and underpinnings of what is acceptable theater and et cetera, and I have to eradicate that stuff from my thinking because I can't live in the pleasing game other than to please myself and trying to connect with the audience and knowing that ultimately it will be between me and the people who get their eyes on it. And then the byproduct can be things like this, the desk sessions, still photographs on social media as the process begins. I can take people into the process of figuring out the marketing plan, where the first production will be. All that exciting stuff will be byproduct. And more people will probably see that than will actually see the show, as I have very astutely been kind of coached by a friend. She said that that's really what has to be, the Allen Ginsberg. I have never read an Allen Ginsberg poem. The guy got more press and is considered a very important cultural figure of the 20th century, and yet have I read a single poem? There is a famous poet who is a colleague and a brother in poetry from my hometown. My childhood doctor was his son, William Carlos Williams. I've read a poem or two because I had to, because being from his hometown of Rutherford, New Jersey, and my dad was a poet. Father's Day without my dad coming down the pike. It's a good point to bring up William Carlos Williams randomly and I would consider this a glimmer as I sit here and randomly, dive off the board for a desk session and somehow pull a theme, which is what art is to me. It's when you're at your best funneling this stuff, you feel your receptors, and that would bring you to mention Allen Ginsberg, which then got me to think about William Carlos Williams. But the point being, Walt Whitman, another New Jersey poet, and the real reason the only Walt Whitman I know is because the movie Fame has I Sing the Body Electric as a song, and that's referencing Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, I think. And point being is, you can be a renowned poet and nobody's read your poem. So there's always something to be gleaned or something to be gained from the idea of doing your shit and then understanding that it will be there can be more gained by the perception of a guy who's currently running a one-man show, or the perception of a guy who can pull off a one-man show. And so it's almost as if that coaching is saying nothing bad can come from putting it out there. And I think that's really the notion there, that the work itself has to be gratifying, pleasing. That as I sat and watched the Tony Awards and saw people I knew, friends of mine from yore, and my play harkens to that time, that there is a tendril of connection to that, and that the reach out through the stage to the audience is one thing, and then the beauty of now is that you can reach more people in the building blocks of a production, and maybe that's one of the few, if there are any, one of the few positive things that can come out of social media and or mass media as we know it. And theater being arcane and archaic, while true, may be the last bastion of human-made performance art, right? As my paranoia about that stuff lurks deep in my mind. And so a little bit of a mandate or a quest, that's another reason for our quest, is to have a portable, performative piece of theater to counteract the disconnection. And while I wish I were further along with it and already in production, the best time to invest is now, as is 20 years ago, and then the next best is now. And so I'm investing now in having a live show. And again, the idea of a mission to declutter And that's like a mission to declutter. It's literally about me decluttering a house, and then stumbling upon this. But also, there's been a lot of cluttered thoughts, a lot of cluttered crossed wires, a lot of cluttered mindsets over the years, with bad habits, with fears, with all the things that come attendant to a life sometimes in the arts, or a life of a certain background. It harkens to decluttering that mind, and I guess getting back to the purpose of what I really connected with when I started doing theater. And that when I did meditate, getting back to that, when I did meditate, it would often be in these rooms before class started, or these rooms rehearsing a play, in Florida, or the backstage in Boston, all the camaraderie, all that stuff, and those quiet moments where, those exciting theater things, adorning your makeup mirror with a photo, the ritual before show, and then always those prayers after closing night of thank you for this run, and may I have another one. And it just dawns on me that I did find a sort of belief system and a form of reverence and religion in the theater, and it's a business, and so that may have made me a little naive to things, but there's still a chance for humanity to fight through this stuff, and that's kind of the why. And so when I have on a mission to declutter, a man finds a photo that jars a memory and ignites the story of the return of Otis Redding, spanning a decade's quest for art, faith, and belonging. This one-man show questions the cost of pursuing an elusive dream. So if you're wanting to see kind of a testament to, and it's a question. That's these verbs that I chose. They aren't. It's a question. And some of these sacrifice, and in the stories I tell, hopefully they hold water. They're seaworthy, and they'll connect. But it is a question. It's always a question. Obviously, with a trophy in hand, it's worth it. But when there's all the time between the first igniting to that trophy, all that time in between, that's the question I'm still in, and so hopefully it and it can relate to non-theater people too, right? What's an elusive dream for anybody? A California dream, if you're from somewhere urban in New York, to get to the California dream, or to the Florida dream, the Gulf Coast, or anything, to just to have a family could be an elusive dream for people when it's hard to come by. And so these are the things, not to write to a fictitious or imaginary audience to please them. It's just trying to find a way to come up with a universal thing. And I get a little say in the matter. That's the kind of beauty of it, and that's the exciting thing about it. And so, boy, I did not really see a lot of this coming in terms of how I guess I had an agenda to share my new title, The Return of Otis Redding, and I guess to get that log line out from memory, because I got about 30 pages to remember once I get this first reading out of the way, and I guess reconnecting and looking for glimmers, as I have gotten better and my foot is healing, I have to think about going back to work, and that is a ponderous situation for me. I won't bore you with those details, but speaking to my friend who has already done his one-man show, the one that was the most exciting and rewarding artistic experience of his career, I said, man, I've been lucky to be able to not be at work and to work on all this stuff, all the auditioning and all the, and I just want to keep it going, and I want something to pay off so that this is the reality, where it's full time or where it's sustained, or this is where I can spend my energies. And he was very supportive of that notion, saying, I really wish that for you because, I think you got the talent to sustain it that way. And so taking some matters into my own hands with the one-man show, I guess, is also a theme that is manifest just in the presence of the man on stage. And that's another reason why theater or any live show is powerful, because we came here, to put on a show, and, that's basic. But people have been responding to that for centuries, and they still are. So that's the redoubling of my efforts. That's the reinvesting. That's the doubling down. That's the splitting the fucking cards on the blackjack. Is I'm going back to the lab and trying to remember that we'll do it live. Like Homeboy said in that blooper. I'm going to do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing fucking sucks. What was that guy's name? Bill O'Reilly's Meltdown. That shit was funny. But we're going to do it live, and we're going to, say prayers for future productions. Congratulations to the Tony winners, and congratulations to you guys for anything that's going your way, any of these glimmers. Happy Father's Day. For the fathers who we have here and the ones who have traveled on, which is sad and very present in my family these days. So have a good one. And 41, we're just getting started, baby. All right, peace.